The practical problem and its solutions. Suppose that each of us is disposed to do what will be better for himself, or his family, or for those he loves. There is then a practical problem. Unless something changes, the actual outcome will be worse for everyone. This problem is one of the reasons why we need more than laissez-faire economics, why we need both politics and morality. Let us use labels, and let us take as understood the words, or his family, or those he loves. Each has two alternatives: E, more egoistic; A, more altruistic. If all do E, that will be worse for each than if all do A. But whatever others do, it will be better for each if he does E. The problem is that, for this reason, each is now disposed to do E. This problem will be partly solved if most do A, wholly solved if all do. A solution may be reached in one or more ways. Each might do A if E becomes impossible, which is solution 1, or because he becomes disposed to do A. He might become so disposed because A would now be better for him. It might now be better for him because of a change in his situation, which is solution 2, or because of a change in him, which is solution 3. Or he might become disposed to do A whether or not A would now be better for him. It may now be true that, because of this change in him, A would not be worse for him, which would be solution 4. Or that despite this change in him, A would still be worse for him, which is the 5th and final solution. The change in 3 differs from the change in 4. In 4, someone is disposed to do A whether or not this would be better for him. It is a mere side effect that, because of this change in him, A would not be worse for him. In 3, someone is disposed to do A only because, given some other change in him, doing A would be better for him. 1 to 4 abolish the dilemma. The altruistic choice ceases to be worse for each. These are often good solutions, but they are sometimes inefficient or unattainable. We then need 5. 5 solves the practical problem, but it does not abolish the dilemma. A theoretical problem remains. In this and the next chapter, I discuss how we can solve the practical problem. In solution 1, where E becomes impossible, the self-benefiting choice is made impossible. This is sometimes best. In many contributors' dilemmas, there should be inescapable taxation. But 1 would often be a poor solution. Fishing nets could be destroyed, soldiers chained to their posts. Both have disadvantages. Or, because of a change in his situation, someone might be disposed to do A. This is a less direct solution. E remains possible, but A is made better for each. This might be a system of rewards. But if this works, all must be rewarded. It may be better if the sole reward is to avoid some penalty. If this works, no one pays. If all deserters would be shot, there may be no deserters. The choice between 1 and 2 is often difficult. Consider the peasant's dilemma, where it will be better for each if he or she has more children, worse for each if all do. Some countries reward 2-child families. China now rewards one-child families. But where the problem is most serious, the country is too poor to give everyone rewards. And if such a system is to be effective, non-rewards must be like penalties. And since the system would not be wholly effective, some would have to bear such penalties. And such penalties fall not on the parents only, but also on the children. An alternative is one where it is made impossible for people to have more than 2 children. This would involve compulsory sterilization after the birth of one's second child. It would be better if this sterilization could be reversed if either or both of one's children died. Such a solution may seem horrendous, but it might receive unanimous support in a referendum. It would be better for all the people in some group if none rather than all have more than 2 children. If all prefer that this be what happens, all may prefer and vote for such a system of compulsory sterilization. If it was unanimously supported in a referendum, this might remove what is horrendous in the compulsion. And this solution has advantages over a system of penalties or rewards. As I have said, when such a system is not wholly effective, those with more children must pay penalties, as must their children. It may be better if what would be penalized is, instead, made impossible. 1 and 2 are political solutions. What is changed is our situation. 3 to 5 are psychological. It is we who change. This change may be specific, solving only one dilemma. The fishermen might grow lazy. The soldiers might come to prefer death to dishonor, or be drilled into automatic obedience. Here are 4 changes of a more general kind. We might become trustworthy. Each might then promise to do A on condition that the others make the same promise. We might become reluctant to be free riders. If each believes that many others will do A, he may then prefer to do his share. We might become Kantians. Each would then do only what he could rationally will everyone to do. None could rationally will that all do E. Each would therefore do A. We might become more altruistic. Given sufficient altruism, each would do A. These are moral solutions, because they might solve any dilemma. They are the most important psychological solutions. They are often better than political solutions. This is in part because they do not need to be enforced. Take the Samaritan's dilemma. It cannot be made impossible not to help strangers. Bad Samaritans cannot be easily caught and fined. Good Samaritans could be rewarded. But for this to be ensured, the law might have to intervene. Given the administrative costs, this solution may not be worthwhile. It would be much better if we became directly disposed to help strangers. It is not enough to know which solution would be best. Any solution must be achieved or brought about. This is often easier with the political solutions. Situations can be changed more easily than people. But we often face another second-order contributor's dilemma. Few political solutions can be achieved by a single person. Most require cooperation by many people. But a solution is a public good, benefiting each, whether or not he does his share in bringing it about. In most large groups, it will be worse for each if he does his share. The difference that he makes will be too small to repay his contribution. This problem may be small in well-organized democracies. It may be sufficient here to get the original dilemma widely understood. This may be difficult, but we may then vote for a political solution. If our government responds to opinion polls, there may even be no need to hold a vote. The problem is greater when there is no government. This is what worried Hobbes. It should now worry nations. One example is the spread of nuclear weapons. Without world government, it may be hard to achieve a solution. The problem is greatest when its solution is opposed by some ruling group. This is the dilemma of the oppressed. Such contributors' dilemmas often need moral solutions. We often need some people who are directly disposed to do their share. If these can change the situation so as to achieve a political solution, this solution may be self-supporting, but without such people, it may never be achieved. The moral solutions are, then, often best, and they are often the only attainable solutions. We therefore need the moral motives. How could these be introduced? Fortunately, that is not our problem. They exist. This is how we solve many prisoners' dilemmas. Our need is to make these motives stronger and more widely spread. With this task, theory helps. Prisoners' dilemmas need to be explained. So do their moral solutions. Both have been too little understood. One solution is, we saw, a conditional agreement. For this to be possible, it must first be true that we can all communicate. If we are purely self-interested or never self-denying, the ability to communicate would seldom make a difference. In most large groups, it would be pointless to promise that we shall make the altruistic choice, since it would be worse for each if he kept his promise. But suppose that we are trustworthy. Each can now promise to do A on condition that everyone else makes the same promise. If we know that we are all trustworthy, each will have a motive to join this conditional agreement. Each will know that, unless he joins, the agreement will not take effect. Once we have all made this promise, we shall all do A. If we are numerous, unanimity will in practice be hard to obtain. If our only moral motive is trustworthiness, we shall then be unlikely to achieve the joint conditional agreement. It would be likely to be worse for each if he joined. We shall also be unlikely even to communicate. There are few people whose only moral motive is trustworthiness. Suppose that we are also reluctant to be free riders. If each of us has this motive, he will not wish to remain outside the joint conditional agreement. He will prefer to join, even if doing so will be worse for him. This solves the problem just mentioned for the joint agreement. And if enough people are reluctant to be free riders, there will be no need for an actual agreement. All that is needed is an assurance that there will be many who do A. Each would then prefer to do his share. But a reluctance to free ride cannot by itself create this assurance. So there are many cases where it provides no solution. The Kantian test could always provide a solution. This test has its own problems. Could I rationally will either that none practice medicine or that all do? If we refine the test, we may be able to solve such problems. But in prisoners' dilemmas, they do not arise. These are the cases where we naturally say, what if everyone did that? The fourth moral solution is sufficient altruism. I am not referring here to pure altruism. Pure altruists who give no weight to their own interests may face analogs of the prisoner's dilemma. It can be true that, if all rather than none do what is certain to be better for others, this will be worse for everyone. By sufficient altruism, I mean sufficient concern for others, where the limiting case is impartial benevolence, an equal concern for everyone, including oneself. The fourth solution is the least understood. It is often claimed that, in those contributors' dilemmas that involve very many people, what each person does would make no difference. This has been thought to show that rational altruists would not contribute. This is not so.